Hello and welcome to Fearless DIY Music. My name is Tristan Lass, and today I want to talk about an issue that's come up a number of times on the channel. I'm always kind of criticizing Dreadnought style acoustic guitars. They are indeed my least favorite type of acoustic guitar, and I thought that I would take the time to make a brief video about why I feel that way. Why do I hate Dreadnought guitars so much? Number one is just, as I'm sitting here with it in my lap, is I feel like I just have a giant box in my lap. The comfort factor on these guitars is horrific, especially in the seated position. Standing is not much better. Whenever I play a Dreadnought for any extended amount of time, I end up with rash here, just from basic motion trying to get over the body of the guitar. I find them just to be ergonomically completely unsatisfying. And I think that's probably the biggest issue I have is I don't like to hold them. I don't like having to deal with just the sheer size of it. They're just not a comfortable guitar in any way, shape, or form. Unless you're just a giant person. I'm not a small person. I'm over 6 feet tall, and it still is really tough for me to get around on one of these. So that's my number one complaint. Number two, these guitars were designed for an era when there was no amplification. So, no meaningful amplification. So, the giant body is, it's a big box designed to push a lot of air to get a lot of volume out to an audience. The traditional small body guitars of the 18th century, 19th century, into the early 20th century could not compete with the newer instruments of the day, especially in American music. You had brass going on. You had also the banjo came along. That really was a game changer. The banjo was so loud that it drowned out guitars. So the Dreadnought body style was developed as a giant speaker, basically. So that hence its size, hence its shape. And it served a great purpose. Of course, they're loud. They're very loud guitars. They're probably the loudest in the acoustic guitar family, even louder than jumbos, because jumbos have more of a pinched waist. These have tons of bass response as well. So those are great things when you have no means of amplifying the instrument. If you just have an acoustic guitar and you're never in front of a microphone, never in front of a camera, whatever, just in a room or around a campfire, sure, a Dreadnought's huge projection may be exactly, what you need. However, in every other situation, I find that the giant volume and the sheer mass of air that it pushes and its gigantic bass response make it an unwieldy beast in the studio. In live stage situations, it can become a very unmanageable, woofy mess where tons of EQing has to be done to tame the instrument, and thereby basically changing the tone of it so fundamentally that you might as well use a smaller body instrument to begin with. So, number two is its, loudness. And then three kind of got folded in there, and that's its EQ range. I at least in my opinion, I find that the bass-heavy sound of a Dreadnought guitar is just unmanageable in many, many microphone situations, in many PA situations. Even using some sort of piezo or pickup system can become quite unwieldy very quickly. Thereby, you have to, do a bunch of EQ corrections to make the guitar not woof or not be too bass heavy. I also find that the high end on a Dreadnought is nice. It usually is pretty sparkly, but the big scoop in the mid range is what in my opinion, is what really kind of brings the Dreadnought down, and that'd be number 4. I want a mid range present, smaller bodied acoustic guitar, and a smaller body guitar will give you more of that evenness and that mid range feel. Mid range, frequency response. If I'm finger picking or something like that, I would never use a Dreadnought. I only use this Dreadnought and my 12-string Dreadnought are just for strumming, and usually not in front of a microphone, although the 12-string is a little bit of an exception because it's a character instrument. So, and also due to the fact that it's a 12-string, it doesn't have that giant bass response due to the fact that it's a chimey instrument to begin with. But back to my point, the big bass and the big treble, it just doesn't do it for me in any way, shape, or form in the recording studio or even live. If I was going to go do a show without any microphones, I might pick this up. And the pickup in this is actually pretty reasonably good. Also, the fact that this is a laminate back and sides and not a particularly bassy sounding Dreadnought is why it's the only one left in my collection that's a 6-string. It's just a Yamaha FG 730, and it's a great instrument because it does not have a giant bottom end, and that's what I like. So anyway, that giant bass response, lack of mid-range, more reasons why I just don't like Dreadnoughts in general. And I'm trying to think, is there anything else? Back to finger picking, I find that, when I'm recording acoustic guitars, and a lot of times when I'm performing, I'm not just strumming. I like to do a lot of finger picking stuff. And I find that the Dreadnought is maybe good for fast bluegrass, flat picking stuff or something like that. But for the kind of finger picking patterns that I utilize, which are based more off of classical music and things like that, the Dreadnought just does not perform at all to any sort of standard tonally that I need to pull that off. Hence my hatred for Dreadnoughts. I think that they serve a purpose in particular genre music to this day. Also, like I said, lack of amplification. If you're never going to plug in, you're never going to play in front of a microphone, a Dreadnought may be the perfect instrument for you. However, in any other situation, I feel like these are a throwback instrument. I feel like their time has come and gone. They were designed for a particular purpose at a particular time for a particular style of music. And it's always dismaying to me when I see that it is still considered like the gold standard of acoustic guitars. I worked for a long time in a retail shop that dealt in high-end acoustic guitars. And Dreadnought people are Dreadnought people. You can't talk them out of them. But everybody else who was willing to listen, I steered towards smaller body instruments like, single aught to double aught to triple aught, in the analogous bodies, concert body sizes and things like that from other brands besides Martin. And I tell you, about 7 times out of 10, people went with the smaller body instrument. It felt more comfortable in the hand and in the lap, and they were more satisfied with the tonal evenness and beauty that a smaller body instrument has. All right, well, enough about my rant about Dreadnoughts. I just kind of wanted to put this issue to rest. I know that I've mentioned it a few times in other videos, and I just wanted to do a standalone video where I talk about what I have against Dreadnought guitars. Now you know. Argue with me in the comments. That's totally fine. I get it. There's a lot of people who this is just it, and I understand that, but it's not for me. All right. If you liked this video, please share it. Also, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time with another video. You take care.